Alright guys, so this is CAT 2024 RC, right? So we would be doing around 3 RCs in today's class. So first RC, this was slightly uh, difficult RC in your VRC slot 1, right? So what we would be doing is, we would be reading the paragraph of this passage, and we would try to write the summary of each paragraph, and then we'll go back to the questions. Alright, so we'll try to write the summary of every paragraph, and then we will go back to the passage questions, and we'll try to solve those questions with the help of tooling, right? So the first paragraph talks about there are three other common drivers for carnivore human attack, which is CH attack, alright, some of which are more preventable than others. Alright, there are few attacks in carnivore human attacks, those are preventable, alright. Now, natural aggression based conflicts, such as those involving females protecting their young or animals protecting as a food source, can often be avoided as long as people can stay away from those animals and their food. Alright, so in human carnivore attack, the kind of attacks that are preventable would be included under the animals. If you would just avoid going close uh, to those animals and their food sources, right? All right, so if you would go back to paragraph 2, it talks about carnivore that recognizes humans as a means to get food are a different story. As they become more reliant on human food they might find at campsites or in rubbish bins, they might become less avoidant of humans, that is, they would be habitualizing of humans. All right, losing that instinctive fear response put them into more situations where they could get into altercations with humans, which often results that being put down by humans. A fed bear is a dead bear, says Sarvain, referring to a common saying among biologists and conservationists. All right, so your paragraph 1 talks about in human carnivore attack, there are few attacks that can be preventable, and the kind of attacks that are preventable um would be if, let's say, the people would stay away from animals and their food sources, and also with the animals who are trying to protect their young ones or the food source, right? Now the second paragraph talks about there are certain attacks that are not preventable, right? In that category, when they would become habitualized of humans. Okay, so third paragraph now talks about predatory or predation related attacks are quite rare, only accounting for 17% of attacks in North America since 1955. They occur when a carnivore view human as a prey and hunts it like it would any other animal, use it as a food. Alright, so paragraph third talks about predation, that is now a rare instance. Right, all right. Now, paragraph number 4, it talks about then there are animal attacks provoked by animal people taking picture with them, feeding them in natural settings such as national park, which often ends with animal being enthusiastic out of precaution. Eventually, that animal become habitualized to people, then their bad things happen to animal. And the folks who initially wanted to make that connection don't necessarily realize that, says Christine Wilson, a postdoctoral researcher at UC Berkeley, California, who been studying coyote human conflict. So coyote as like you can refer as animals and number of animal that you can refer. All right. So now it talks about how the attacks can be like provoked if people would go uh, and cross their boundary to take picture with them, they would feed there into the natural settings, right? So this can definitely like this would not be good thing for animals. It would turn out to be fatal for them and would not be any major effect for humans as such. Right now, if you would, so we have paragraph 1 summary for attacks that are preventable, paragraph 2 summary, the kind of attacks that are not preventable, paragraph 3, now predation is a rare occurrence, and then paragraph 4 talks about natural setting, right? Then now, if you go back to para 5, it talks about after conducting countless postmortems on all type of carnivore human attack, spanning around 75 years, Penteni teams believe that 50% could have been avoided if humans react differently. A 2017 study co-authored by Pentenelli found that engaging in risky behavior around large carnivore increases the likelihood of an attack. So, a research of Penterni, it talks about that 50% of that carnivore human attack could be avoided if just the humans could have been reacted differently to that situation. Right now, if you would move to paragraph number 7, it talks about two of the most commonly risky behavior are parents leaving their children to play outside unattended and walking to unleash dogs. According to the study, Wixon says 66% of the coyote attack involves a dog, perhaps end up in a situation where the dog being chased or their dog chases a coyote, or maybe they are walking their dog near a den that's marked and the coyote want to spot them anyway, says Wilson. So this is your one such risky behavior, right? And this can definitely like increase the chances of human carnivore interaction as well as the attack, right? So if you would go back to paragraph number 8, it talks about experts believe climate change also play an escalation in the human carnivore conflicts, but the correlation still needs to be ironed out. So the author is basically saying कि, okay, this could play a major role in the escalation of human carnivore conflict, but still needs to be figured it out, ironed out. Okay, as finite source becomes scarcer, carnivore and people are coming into more frequent contact, which means that more conflict could occur. Says Jan Miller, International Program Specialist for the US Fish and Wildlife Services. For example, she says there was an uptick in the lion attack in the western India during a drought when lion and people were relying in the same water sources. So, in your paragraph number 8, it talks about how climate change could even worsen the conflict of human carnivore attack, right? Now, if you would move to paragraph 9, which is the last paragraph of this passage, it talks about the likelihood of human carnivore conflict appears to be higher in areas of low income countries dominated by vast rural landscape and farmland. According to Pentony research, there are a lot of working landscapes in the global south that are really heterogeneous, that are interspersed with carnivore habitats, forests, and savannas, which create a lot more opportunities for these encounters just statistically, says Wilson. So now in your last paragraph, Wilson is saying, all right, so the location or the countries of low income, right, with heterogeneous condition, rural areas, in these places you would have very high chances of increase or uh, great level of increment of the attack of human carnivore. Right. All right. So now we have summary of every paragraph of this passage. So now we will go back to the questions and we'll then take help of the doodling that we have done for every paragraph and then see if there are any question that is left and that we need to go back to the passage and that cannot be solved by our doodling, right? So question number 1, according to the passage, which of the following scenario would most likely exacerbate the frequency of human carnivore conflict? So I would have four options, right? Wait, let me just change the color. And I have to pick that option which would worsen the problem. That is, that would increase the frequency of human carnivore conflict, right? And three options would be that options which would not worsen the problem, but it would be like weighing acting in some way that would lead to decrement in the human carnivore attack, right? Let's say if you talk about option number A, it talks about addressing the impact of climate change in the availability of resources for wildlife. Let's say, so if you are addressing the impact of in your passage, it is clearly given that climate change does play an impact role, right? It would have a significant impact with this resources stuff and everything. So if you would address that issue, definitely you would have low chances of having those kind of attack. So this is a positive statement. This would not worsen, exacerbate meaning that would worsen the problem, right? So this option is definitely not um, worsening the scenario or the of the human carnivore conflict. So this cannot be my answer for the question. Okay, unleashing dogs by pet owners in the areas of high known high concentration of large carnivore, let's say if this would happen, definitely this can worsen the problem if you are just unleashing dogs, right? Okay, so let me hold this option. I'll read option number C and D, and then I'll finally decide which among these four options is the correct answer for this question, right? So we'll go back to option number C. It talks about implementing food waste management strategies to prevent wild animals being attracted to human food sources. Let's say if you are doing this, so you are doing this in a positive sense, and if you are doing this in a positive sense, that means you are reducing the chances of human carnivore attack. And so this cannot be my answer, because I have to look for that option that would worsen, like that would lead to more altercation between humans and carnivores. So this option is precisely not doing that, so you cannot go with that option, right? Attempting to photograph wild animals from within the secured viewing areas, national park and protected zone, again this is a positive way. If you are doing this, you would reduce the chances of human carnivore interaction and their altercation, and hence this cannot be the answer of my question, because I have to mark that option which would worsen the problem, right? So second is the correct answer for this question. I hope you are able to get to the answer, right? So now we will go to question number two. It talks about, given the insights provided by Penterney research and Wilson's statement, which of the following conclusions can be drawn about the relationship between landscape heterogeneity and human carnivore conflict? So I have to deal in this, right? So if we would go with option number A, it talks about landscape heterogeneity characterized by a mix of farmland and natural habitats inherently reduce the chances of human carnivore attack conflict. But the point is, in my passage is clear that landscape heterogeneity will increase the chances of human carnivore attack. So this is absolutely incorrect in according to the passage, and hence cannot be the answer of my question. Right? If you move to the option number B, it talks about homogeneous landscape with uniform agricultural practice are more likely to experience high rates of human carnivore conflict. Again, this is a wrong option. Why? Because if in my passage it was clearly mentioned that heterogeneous landscapes would be more likely to experience high rates of human carnivore conflict. So for homogeneous landscape, it would definitely be less. They are less likely to experience uh, human carnivore conflict, right? So this cannot be inferred and cannot be drawn with my passage. Option number C, the diversity and interspersion of working landscape with carnivore habitats in rural areas increase the statistical probability of encounters between human and carnivore. Precisely, because in my passage, the diversity point is being given in your last paragraph of the passage. All right, and rural areas is given. So this can be inferred, but I'll not mark this as my final answer until unless I'm sure that D cannot be my answer, because I'm very, very much sure about option number A and B. Right. If you go back to option number D, it talks about low income countries with vast contiguous wilderness areas are less prone to human carnivore conflict because necessary for such encounters. But the point is, low income countries with vast less prone, but the point is, in my passage is clearly given that low income countries are more prone to human carnivore conflict. So hence this cannot be inferred and cannot be the answer of my question. Question number 3, according to the passage, what is a significant